There is craft in this smallest insect, with strands of web spinning out its thoughts, in its tin body finding rest, and with the wind lightly turning. Before the eaves it stakes out its broad earth. For a moment on the fence, it lives through its life. When you know that all beings are even thus, you will know what creation is made of. Words of the Japanese poet Sugawara no Michizane. And if you just press V, that should, thank you. Good morning. Welcome to Cross Street Chapel's Sunday service. I'm grateful for all of you who are joining me here in person, as well as those listening and watching online. As always, we seek to try to experiment and push the boat out and change. And today we have two cameras, so one so that we can see Aaron playing and not just enjoy the listening of his music, but really appreciate it. So thank you. Whatever your reason for joining us today, be it finding a space of sorrow and tears, looking for a space for joy and laughter, trying to find out a few words of wisdom, or perhaps simply resting with the divine, I hope that you will find it here, as well as a warm community. Sugawara no Michizane talks about the fragility of creation as embodied in an insect, and the recognition that we are all just as fragile, and the earth is just as fragile. And it's only when we come to appreciate that fragility that we might better understand and care for the world. Something I hope we can all appreciate. But now we turn to our own faith tradition with the words of the Reverend David Johnson. This is to light our chalice, to give a beacon of inspiration. This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor. We gather part of the great circle of life around the hearth of faith, the altar of our common life, the fire of hope and commitment. And we turn now to our covenant, which will appear on the screen. We gather here in sacred fellowship to witness the fullness of our lives and all life, to hold and be held, tell stories and listen, to be renewed and renew the world. We speak with care and patience. We act with gentleness and compassion. We forgive each other and ourselves. In faith that we build beloved community, we renew our covenant today. Amen. Moving from the universal to the Unitarian to the cross-street Chapelian, we now have a point of individual and personal prayer. Tender Gardener, we have brought with us not only ourselves, but our assumptions. Inside of us we may find not only our love and compassion, but also our prejudice. Fill us with doubt. Remove from us the certainties which we have built up with poor logic and unsound reason. Gently teach us and guide our shoots so that we may grow towards you and draw upon your energy. Tender Gardener, remind us that as a tree grows, no new branches break out of the hard, brittle bark. Only where it has been pruned, where the core of its being touches the sky and is nourished by the sun, will it grow. As a tree grows, so let us as well. With each day, let the lessons enrich our souls, spirit, and mind. But in our own pruning, do not let us be injured beyond our means. As the wound inflicted on the heart of a person is lasting and painful. But may we remember this so as not to harm the rest of creation. Give us the strength of judgment and compassion and love. Amen. There is still no singing within the chapel, though I draw upon the words of a colleague of mine, which is that if I can't hear it, then it's presumably inaudible enough for it to not be too dangerous. So please do join together in our hymn.
See
Thank you. We now have a couple readings and a few words of my own, beginning with words of the Unitarian lay leader Barbara Rohde, entitled The Miraculous Picture. During the hot Nebraska summers of my childhood, I spent hours high in my treehouse devouring the books I found in the small collection my parents had acquired from the estates of various relatives. One of my favorites was A Wonder Book, Nathaniel Hawthorne's retelling of classical myths. My favorite of those stories was The Miraculous Picture, the story of Baucis and Philemon. This elderly, poor, but generous-hearted couple invite two gods, disguised as beggars, to come into their cottage to rest and eat. The gods keep asking that their bowls be replenished, and the old couple becomes sad and embarrassed because they know the pitcher is empty. But the gods show them otherwise. No matter how often they pour from the pitcher, it is always full. I suppose that as a child, what I liked was the thought of possessing such a pitcher. Much later, I realized that in some sense I did. The story of the miraculous pitcher seems to be telling us that in the realm of the Spirit, there is no such thing as a non-renewable resource. That is an important concept. Most of us have it backward. For centuries, we have had it backwards. We have believed that material resources are infinite, but the resources of the Spirit need to be hoarded with care. We act as if the supply of oil can go on forever, but that there are limits to the amount of love that we can give away. How often I have found myself closing off from people in need because I was afraid of being spiritually drained, only to find myself in the driest of deserts. We have arrived at a time in our history when we are beginning to realize that this planet is our only home. We can no longer make a mess of the place where we are and then move on. A species can come to an end. Resources can be used up. All growth is not a sign of health. But I suspect we doubt more than ever the truth in the story of the miraculous pitcher, or the loaves and the fishes. We find it hard to believe that we will find the spiritual nourishment to meet the needs of this chaotic age. The wisdom of the centuries and our own experience tells us otherwise. If we do not let our fears have dominion, we may discover that in the midst of pain we find inner strength. In the midst of bewilderment we find inner clarity. In the midst of nourishing another, we find ourselves nourished. Barbara Rohde's rendition of The Miraculous Picture. This is followed by the poet Walt Whitman, Miracles. Why, who makes much of a miracle? As to me, I know of nothing else but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan, or dart my sight over the roofs of houses towards the sky, or wade with naked feet along the beach just in the edge of the water, or stand under trees in the woods, or talk by day with anyone I love, or sleep in the bed at night with anyone I love, or sit at table at dinner with the rest, or look at strangers opposite me riding in the car, or watch honeybees busy round the hive of a summer forenoon, or animals feeding in the fields, or birds, or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness of the sundown, or the stars shining so quiet and bright, or the exquisite, delicate, thin curve of the new moon in spring. These, with the rest, on and all, are to me miracles. The whole referring, yet each distinct and in its place. To me, every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. To me, the sun is a continual miracle. The fishes that swim, the rocks, the motion of the waves, the ships with men in them. What stranger miracles are there? Miracles by Walt Whitman. If ever there was a poem to inflict some passion upon. With Britain's sort of summertime really coming upon us, as well as people sort of still spending a bit more time inside, though I'm witnessing more and more socializing out in the cafes and bars. It's been lovely to witness the recurrence of what happened last year, last summer, in our block of flats anyway, with people going out on the balcony, which was something we hadn't really witnessed before. It's still tentative, it's still, I suppose, early days, but yeah, people are going out and enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the wind and the cool weather when the breeze blows by. And the other day I was looking and I saw Tom lying on his back on our balcony. And I thought, oh, that's lovely. He must be staring up at the clouds. And seeing him do that reminded me of my own childhood. It really brought me back to the time when I was growing up, in those brilliant, Michigan gets really brilliant hot summers, clear skies, and my own sort of experience of going and lying down in the grass, looking up at the stars in the nighttime, looking up at the clouds in the daytime. You might be a bit perplexed by the title, Dinosaur Cow or Clock Tower, but do bear with me. Because this is the brilliant thing about childhood and about clouds. Who amongst us remembers, lying down and looking at the clouds and thinking about what images they evoke? Was it a dinosaur that we saw? Or perhaps it was a cow, or perhaps it was a clock tower. It could be any number of infinite things. For me, there was always the sort of challenge, a sort of melancholy about the ephemerality as well, looking at something and being able to see very clearly, well, that looks like a dinosaur to me. And then a few seconds later, it would shift and it would move and it would have, in its progression across the sky, it would have changed into something else. There would have been some transformation of my perspective of that cloud. When I was younger, as I said, there was a melancholy element because I wanted to preserve that. I wanted to preserve the image that I had seen. Much like I had a similar feeling with kaleidoscopes. They're so fragile, aren't they? And you get this sort of beautiful hexagon of images, and just the slightest touch brings out something new, which can be excellent and wonderful and exciting, but it can also be a sense of loss over what was and no longer is. So you have the clouds shifting from being one thing to another. You also, of course, have arguments between children about what one cloud looks like. And so I suppose the childhood equivalent of the Rorschach test. And so in all of this, I'm looking at Tom and I'm thinking how wonderful it is to have that experience in childhood of looking at clouds, which are dreams in a sense. And it's illustrated, of course, with, the thought bubbles that we see in comic strips. It's a cloud. It's something evocative about looking at clouds and then our own imposition of what they mean, what they signify as to our dreams, as to our aspirations and ambitions. So, seeing all that, I thought it would be a lovely father-son moment to go and lie down next to him and to share in this experience of gazing at the clouds. And so I lay down next to him and I looked up, and I had forgotten that there's actually several floors above us, And so actually we were just looking at the floor of the balcony above. So I don't talk about sort of dreams deferred. Talk about the sort of material aspiration of wanting to move on to a higher floor, to eventually get to that point where there isn't a floor above, and you can look out from your penthouse suite and spot the clouds finally. So I had a little bit of a chuckle about it, and I realized that actually, yes, it was. There was this sort of imposition of society, this expectation that we're supposed to push ourselves to have more materially, to enrich ourselves with things and ambitions in terms of job prospects and so on and so forth. But what we could also do, at least from the perspective of our balcony, was just tilt ourselves a bit, because the sky was over there. It wasn't above us, but it was over there, and the clouds were over there, and they were just as evocative over there, and they were just as beautiful over there, and they were just as inspirational over there. We can angle ourselves away from the demands that society has for us and see some deeper significance of nature and of the world, and of that infinite compassion that's spoken of in the miraculous picture. Clouds come and go, but they are always there. They disappear and they reappear. That's the nature of the water cycle. They are replenished. The concrete and the steel and the wooden slats above us will break down, and they'll be replenished in their own way as well, but not likely to be in those apartments. But it is the clouds that disappear and come back. By disappearing, they are allowed to come back. And through all this, we can look at it all, and we can reflect that, yes, Whitman's right. The world really is a miracle. Amen. We now have an interlude with photos from Catherine and music from Aaron. Thank you. You now have a chance to share your joys and sorrows, your trials and your triumphs. If you want to share these publicly, you can come forward, light a candle, and say a few words into the microphone so those watching online will be able to participate. And if you are online and you wish to share a joy or sorrow, please type it into the chat box and I will read it out. And as always, if you wish to hold your joys or sorrows in your heart, keeping them private, know that your presence here is enough. Now I'd like to begin with a candle of wishing happy birthday to Paul Evans, a member of our congregation.
So I'm lighting a candle for my dad, who had his birthday this week as well.
For all those joys and sorrows here spoken, and those that remain silently in our hearts. Let us return now to a time of prayer. For all the miracles that we see, we thank you. For all the miracles that bolster us in times of challenge, that challenge us in times of growth, that grow with us through the ages. Those that remain unseen under the surface, we thank you. For the miracle of companionship and reason and recognition, may we be grateful, and may we use these gifts for the benefit of all humankind and all creation. And so we enter into a period of silence. A few notices before we conclude our service. If you're in need of pastoral care, please write to me at minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk. Write as well if you wish to provide a reading or some other element of the service. We're always looking for photos and videos. And as well, if you've just joined us, you're able to join our mailing list again by writing to me. We will be having our Zoom tea and coffee after the service at 1:30. The login details are posted. The meeting ID is 820-2135-7758, and the passcode is CSC. We're grateful as well for any donations that can assist the mission of the chapel. You're able to donate online at justgiving.com/crossstreetchapelmanchester, or if you email me, I can send you the chapel's details for setting up a standing order. So we turn now to our final hymn, There Is a Place I Call My Own, by Don Bessig.
Beyond the things I know.
Thank you to Aaron for the music. Thank you to Emma for the IT, Catherine for the photos and for greeting, Laura and Kate for the video. And thank you all for creating and sharing worship today. We close with the words of Nancy Wood. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to our hearts, even when we have gone away from here. Amen.